Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Buenos dias. I would like to thank you very much for Professor Mariusz Ziółkowski for inviting me for this symposium, and also thanks to Dr. Aleksiej Vranic. And I would like to apologize that I cannot personally present this paper, this presentation, but yesterday we finally came, me and my co-workers and students, for the next field season to the Mesa Verde, Colorado, United States. We still miss some of our luggage, still waiting for this, with equipment also, but hope tomorrow or maybe as soon as possible we will get our missing luggage. So I would like to present you some results of our project that I conduct since 2011 in southwestern Colorado in the Mesa Verde region. Okay, I would like to switch off to the presentation. Hope you can see this. And this research is focusing on different aspects. For example, the documentation and spatial analysis of the settlement system of ancestral Pueblo culture, but also documenting rock art, petroglyphs and paintings left by various Native American societies, pre-Columbian, pre-Hispanic, and historic. Indigenous societies from the Mesa Verde region, including ancestral Puebloans and Ute people and Navajos as well. So different aspects of Native American cultural heritage that we document and trying to analyze and reconstruct from this area. So the Mesa Verde region is a part of the larger area of the North American Southwest that included, for example, the states of Arizona, New Mexico, part of the Utah and Colorado states as well. And also this area stretched more south to the northern part of Mexico to Sonora and Chihuahua to Mexican states. And in the pre-Columbian, pre-Hispanic period, there were many highly developed, complex societies, Native American societies, including ancestral Puebloans, Hohokam, Mimbres, Mogollon, or Casas Grandes cultural traditions. And these societies were farming societies, growing corn, beans, and squash, and other crops as well. They built very sophisticated canals, providing water for their fields. So very skilled water management and sophisticated systems of artificial watering of the fields. These societies are also known, maybe contrary to the popular imagination of North American Indian societies or indigenous societies from this area, but still they left a lot of archaeological evidences. They were complex societies built, even proto-urban places or proto-cities that were lived maybe around 2,000, 3,000 to 5,000 people at once. So really big settlements or even proto-urban places or settlements, I would say. So there are a few examples of ancestral Pueblo sites from the Chaco Canyon in New Mexico and Cliff Palace from Mesa Verde National Park in southwestern Colorado, but also the bird's eye view of the Casas Grandes or Paquime site in northern Mexico, and also some reconstruction of platform mounds from Hohokam culture. So very stratified societies, some of them, not all of them, but some of them very stratified and complex indigenous societies, even from the pre-Columbian times. They were also very skilled not only architects, but also artists, I would say. They produced, made very fine pottery, also a very sophisticated jewelry, a turquoise shell, especially this jewelry, but also one of the most important traces of their present and their cultures is rock art. I mean, the petroglyphs and paintings left on the canyon walls and separate freestanding boulders, rocks, but also within the caves. Also, the murals left on the building walls, sometimes preserved very well, even from the pre-Columbian times or early historic times, also are traces of their really great cultures of development. I'm sorry. This is also very fascinating that some of these cultures survived and remained until today, especially ancestral Puebloan culture. The different Puebloan groups survived until today, and they maintain a lot of traditions, customs, and rights until today. There are 20 different Puebloan groups located in the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico, but also in Hopi tribe, one of the 20 Puebloan groups in northern part of Arizona. So in general, the North American Southwest is the place where many Native American cultures, not only Puebloans, but also Navajos, Apaches, Tohono O'odham, Akimel O'odham, Havasupai, and Utes and other people survived until today, and their reservations actually are located in the places where for the first time they were met by Spanish conquistadors and missionaries in the first half of the 16th century. So, referring to our project in southwestern part of Colorado, this project is from the beginning. It was focusing on the finding and reconstructing the traces of ancestral Puebloan culture from the 13th century AD. So this is the place where the project is conducted, just in the corner of the southwestern part of Colorado, very close to the border with Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. We work within the legally protected area of Canyons of the Ancients National Monument. Actually, we work in two different areas. This monument was created in 2000 by the decision of President Bill Clinton, and since 2011, as I mentioned before, it's conducted by the Jagiellonian University in Krakow and the Institute of Archaeology and Department of New World Archaeology within the Jagiellonian University. The project is the first Polish long-term project in the North American Southwest. Is conducted with cooperation with Canyons of the Ancients National Monument, that is the branch of Bureau of Land Management of the U.S. Department of the Interior, and also with non-profit organization Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. So today I'm connecting with you from the Crow Canyon Archaeological Center campus. So the methods, actually our work is focusing on social, cultural changes, settlement studies, but also rock art analysis, as I mentioned before. And methodology includes both non-invasive surveys and documentation, inventory of the sites, including tracing, and also a lot of what we may call digital archaeology, or a new methodology or digital technologies applied in archaeology, like photogrammetry, 3D terrestrial and aerial laser scanning, a lot of geophysics research, and some other archaeological investigations, including also the chronological studies and limited or test excavations. We also strongly collaborate with some Native American groups, especially Hopi, one of these 20 Puebloan groups from northern Arizona, but also with Ute tribe and some other Native American groups. So to the right, you can see the map of the first area that we are working. And there are 3 canyons. Sand Canyon, East Fork of Rock Creek Canyon, and Graveyard Canyon. And these 3 canyons, there are 41 sites, ancestral Puebloan sites, settlements, and limited activity sites that we can date to the 13th century AD. So there are just examples of these sites. So mostly cliff dwellings located in the alcoves or rock shelters. So with the standing architecture, sandstone architecture preserved up to the 1st and 2nd story. There are some towers, freestanding towers on the flat surfaces, but also the towers located on the very inaccessible places. There are some refugee sites, or what we may call it refugee sites, as well. So there are traces of defensive architecture as well in this area, especially from the end of the or the second half of the 13th century AD. Actually, the 13th century AD, it was the last time of the ancestral Puebloan occupation of this area, and later on it was huge migration and mysterious migration actually from this area to the northern part of Arizona and New Mexico. So to the south and southeast of this place. So in terms of the methodology, as I mentioned before, we do a lot of digital archaeology documentation or digital documentation of Native Americans' cultural heritage. So there are just examples of drone photos and scanning, terrestrial laser scanning of architecture, of rock art, but also the landscape. So to me, it's very important to make like a connection and relation between the sites with the architecture, the sites with the rock art, and also the surrounding landscape. So it's really important to focus not only on particular sites, but to place them in wider context, of course. So also we use traditional documentation, as I mentioned before, so a lot of drawings of the architecture. So it's very good training for our students, for example. So and some other traditional methods like excavations and so on. But to me, it's most important to produce the final documentation, 3D and 2D documentation, using both hand drawing or tracing, and also combining with laser scanning, photogrammetry, to produce as much as possible detailed documentation of the sites that we document or making inventory of. So we produce, for example, there are just few examples of these 40 sites that we documented. Actually, we documented 35 of 41 sites. So still, it's quite big job. So we produce, for example, orthophoto plans and orthophotos and drawings from photogrammetry and from hand drawing. So that's the examples of several walls from one of the sites that you saw before. So 2-story house or 5MT 1805 site. We also use, if available, historic photos. This one is from 1908. It was made by Jesse Nussbaum, one of the prominent American archaeologists from that time, from the beginning of the 20th century. So it also helps, in terms of the preservation of the site. We can compare present state of or condition of the architecture, of the landscape as well, with these historical old photos, of course, when available. So the site we call the gallery because it has preserved some murals and rock art, murals on the building walls, as you can see, and rock art. And this is the present state of or condition of the site, or part of the site. Actually, the photo is from 2014. So you can see to the left the rock art and one of the rooms with preserved murals on it. And the final products, as I said, it's very detailed documentation to the documentation. So from the millimeter paper, hand drawing, tracing, and from the photogrammetry and laser scanning, we are able to produce the documentation that's is the final product. So there are just examples of few walls that we documented. There are just a few examples of the gallery site, different walls. Okay, and also we produce 3D models. This is one of the models from the gallery site. So it is really usable for research and analysis, but also for displaying for the public or for the wider audience. It's really good to present our stuff, for example, in terms of the exhibits and so on. So this is, as I said, one of the examples of 3D models that we produced using laser scanning, photogrammetry. So these two techniques combining together. So it's time consuming, but yeah, but I think it can produce, I mean, combining different methods can produce the best results. So we try to do sometimes the reconstructions of the sites. So this is one of the sites, Sanal Cove, that we saw before, with some reconstructions from the help of the Krakow Polytechnics. We do, in terms of the non-invasive archaeology, a lot of geophysics documentations, including mostly magnetometer studies and electrical resistivity, a little bit of GPR, ground penetrating radar, but it doesn't work well for these sites located on the steep slopes and so on. But electrical resistivity and magnetometry works pretty well at those sites. So we got very fine results from at least 15, 17 sites. We did a lot of dendrochronology sampling, so with American scholars, for example, Tom Wines, one of the best dendrochronologists from the Southwest nowadays, and we got very good results from some sites, and waiting for the rest of the results that the samples are analyzing in the laboratory of tree-ring research at the University of Arizona in Tucson, in southern Arizona. So coming back to this map of this area, there are just few examples of the dates, tree-ring dates that we got. So it's really great for us, and it's big help in terms of the reconstruction of the social model, social structure of these societies. We also do a lot of analysis of spatial relations between sites. So, for example, we discovered that these towers, sometimes preserved up to 3 or 4 meters high, were designed especially for some kind of visual communication and probably transmitting some signals. I mean, smoke signals and fire signals between settlements, to warning, for example, because of approaching enemies or so on. So the communication, visual communication, was very vital part of surviving this community in non-good, very dangerous times, I would say, in the second half of the 13th century AD, where it was like increasing conflicts and violence and degradation of environment, but also changing in the climate and natural environment. So it was really hard time for this ancestral Puebloan society and different Puebloan societies from the Mesa Verde region. So they built, I would say, system of defensive sites and defensive architecture. So we do also some excavations, and also the sites that we excavated are located both within the monument, the Canyons of the Ancients National Monument, but also outside the monument on the private lands attached to the monument, because you know, we are losing a lot of sites and the big picture if you are focusing only on the monument and excluding, as sometimes some archaeologists do here, excluding the sites that are located on private lands. It's very hard sometimes to get access to these sites. It's of course relies on the agreement with the private land owners, but it's worth to collaborate with them and cooperate, because we can reconstruct, I think, a much more better, much more proper situation and have a better picture of these ancient societies if we go a little farther outside the monument or park boundary. So we do a lot of analysis of pottery, statistics in terms of the chronology of pottery, but also of the typology of pottery that we possessed from the excavations, but also from the collections from the surveys, I mean service collections as well. So both from the excavations units and from surface. We do some demographic estimates for this community of sites, I mean these 41 sites. The biggest site was Castle Rock Pueblo, and the rest of the sites were relatively small, but probably were connected with this large settlement or community center, as we may say. We also do a lot of documentation of rock art, and sometimes rock art is located very close to the architecture and also within the site. Excuse me. So we do also laser scanning, photogrammetry, and there is just the comparison between these two methods in terms of the revealing some details of the rock art images. I mean, in this case, the petroglyphs from one of the sites located in Sand Canyon. This is just one example. We have 15 sites with rock art within this community of 41 sites. So the final product still, again, is drawing or tracing. So, and this is also the plan of the site and the petroglyph panel in the context of the site. The plan was produced basing on the laser scanning. And also we do some analysis of sometimes faint, not good preserved petroglyphs and paintings. So this is the example of one of the methods that we use, RTI, or virtual RTI methods. So putting the light from different angles and from different sides to reveal as much details as possible. Sometimes these details are not seen with the naked eye. So we do a lot of collaboration, as I mentioned before, with Native Americans, especially Hopi tribe, but also some other tribes like Utes and to some extent Navajos. And we would like to develop this collaboration. And it refers both to the architecture, to the rock art, to the landscape, and their oral traditions referring to these sites, because we know almost for sure, excuse me, that at least in part these people from the Mesa Verde region that migrated 700, 800 years ago, they came to the Hopi Mesas, sorry, in northern Arizona, and to pueblos located in the Rio Grande Valley, close to Santa Fe or Albuquerque in New Mexico. So there are just few examples of the consultations with Hopi guys, the architecture, but also the rock art. These men are also responsible for conducting some ceremonies in their villages at the Hopi reservation. And yeah, again at the two-story house and consulting with Hopi people, some of the rock art and architecture. We have a lot of hours, maybe around 20 hours of interviews with them and some other stuff. Okay, I would like to move quickly to the second area of our project, that it's located 16 kilometers north west of the first project area that I described very briefly for you. So in this second research area, there are several very large places with rock art, or sites with rock art, especially petroglyphs from different time periods, beginning from the early Common Era, I mean the 1st or 2nd century AD, and until the beginning of the 20th century. So it's like 2000 years of human evolution and development written on the rocks, on the canyon walls, especially on the canyon walls. So before we were in Sand Canyon, this is the Sandstone Canyon, and very close to the Yellow Jacket Canyon, there are two biggest canyons of the southwestern part of Colorado. This area is located roughly 1,600 meters above sea level, but in the foreground you can see the highest peak in the vicinity of 50-60 kilometers, that Utah Mountain, Sleeping Utah Mountain. Actually, it's the peak of this mountain is located on the 3,000 meters above sea level. And it is within the Utah Mountain Utah Tribe Reservation. So it's located only a few kilometers. This reservation is located a few kilometers from our project, our research area. So this is the few sites that we documented, the rock art panels at those sites. There are just few examples of the architecture, but the main evidence of human activities here large rock art panels. So different situation. We started to document those panels in 2014 on the invitation of the park rangers and archaeologists. They wanted for us to develop our research and ask to focus also on the second research area. So I'm really thankful for especially Vince Macmillan and some other people from Canyons of the Ancients National Monument. So as I said before, there are traces of different Native American cultures from different time period, but also a lot of historical inscriptions from really recent times. And methods of the documentation of the rock art panels is mostly photogrammetry. So just a brief introduction to the site. The first site, painted hand petroglyph panel or strawman panel. So this is a very long canyon wall, 130 meters, and the whole wall, this 130 meters, is full covered with petroglyphs from the modern ground surface up to 2 to 3 meters above modern ground surface. So it's really great site, unique site, I would say. It's really also privilege and honor for me to work and at these sites. I think this is the part of the site, and you can see at least at this picture that there are different different styles, different petroglyphs from different time periods, and also Native American stuff like hunting on the bison, deer, mountain sheep, fighting scenes, hunting scenes, but also some clan symbols like bear paw. But above this, it's birthing scenes like this, and these birthing scenes. And among Native American petroglyphs and depictions, there are many historical inscriptions. I mean, names, dates, addresses, initials, even stock brands of first Euro-American settlers in this area. I mean, Spanish, Mexican shepherders and American cowboys. And the first dates appeared at this panel in the end of 19th century AD. So it's like 1887, 88. So that the first dates placed on this panel. We did photogrammetry and orthophoto plans, but also close to this panel we did a lot of geophysics research and limited excavations and geological boreholes to confirm some stuff, because we cannot locate any artifacts. So this is very strange. Probably it's a huge accumulation of soil close to these artifacts, close to these petroglyphs on the canyon wall, and because probably of historic and maybe ancient floods and floodings, catastrophic floods actually, that the water and soil accumulated a lot of soil here, so we discovered that maybe the accumulation is 2 meters deep. So it's really strange situation. But still, there are a lot of petroglyphs, but some of the petroglyphs are located below the modern ground surface. So I choose the photogrammetry method for this huge panel. This is 1/3 of the site, or maybe even 1/4 of the site, because we need to document very fast this panel, because hand drawing it would take for us maybe 2-3 months at least. So we did photogrammetry for a few days, and later on we try to document, to draw all of the petroglyphs in the laboratory in Krakow actually. So single image rectification photogrammetry was chosen for this site, and all of the markers that you can see, these pink or markers were of course measured by the total station or electronic tachymeter, and later on there are just examples of few drawings. It took us maybe 2-3 months in Krakow to draw all of the petroglyphs. There are around 500 depictions at this site. Only Native American depictions, not including the names, dates, and so on. So you can see how it's complicated sometimes. This is like a stratigraphy, in the soil, different time periods, different depictions, and sometimes it's very hard to distinguish different time periods and different cultures from this accumulation of rock art images. So again, the drawing of this almost 30 meters of the panel, and some detailed drawings. Okay, a lot of historic stuff. That's the youth, actually, very late youth stuff. There are some ancestral Puebloan depictions, but also, as you can see, a lot of names, dates, and so on, and some brands. I mean, cows and stock and horses brands. Oh, sorry. So we also came back 2 times to this panel and recorded some missing images from the photogrammetry. It was necessary to come back. And photogrammetry is a great tool, but sometimes we miss from this method some images, or because sometimes of the sun that it's really shining very strongly on this panel, so sometimes it's hard to record by the camera some images, or sometimes they are barely visible. So we came back and we discovered a few more images. I mean, around 40 more images. So it's necessary to double check the photogrammetry documentation, I would say, especially for these large panels. So the second site I would like to show you from this sandstone canyon, it's located 800 meters of the first one that I presented to you, and there are two concentration of rock art images. First, it's located 6 meters above the modern ground surface. It's a huge youth rock art panel again. So hunting on the buffaloes or bison, on mountain sheep and deer, some fighting scenes. But below this panel is like maybe 1.5 meters above the modern ground surface. It's located. There are several ancestral Puebloan panels, and especially I would like to focus and show you one of the panels. There are several images of footprints and sandals, very sophisticated sandals. You can see some drawings of these sandals, so really nice ones. It's like unique, very rare in southwestern rock art to see such beautiful designs, petroglyphs of sandals. We can see of course some paintings on the kiva walls, the building walls, but the petroglyphs are very rare, done so fine. So it's really great. We consulted this with some rock art scholars like Polishawsma and some other guys. And Polishawsma, actually, she came with her husband to the site and she consulted for us some of the stuff. So I'm really thankful for this. Okay, a few last slides about this rock art documentation. This is stretch analysis, so enhancement of these images to reveal again some details that we cannot see by the naked eye or with the naked eye solely. So really powerful tool for especially paintings, but also I use this also for analysis petroglyphs. Okay, so there are also some analyses. I will not focus because I'm running off my time. Sorry, sorry again. But just few examples of the analysis of some petroglyphs from these two sites, and in terms of their chronology and counting and so on. So most of the Utah images, but also some ancestral Puebloans and also some Euro-American stuff. So the last few things I would like to focus on these images left, or initials, names, dates, and so on, left by Spanish-American settlers, cowboys, shepherds, and so on. So it's really important part of the history of the site, I would say. Sometimes we call it vandalism, but we may call also the modern graffiti or historical inscriptions. It's another issue how we can treat these writings, but definitely it's a part of the history of this place. So we also documented all of these names and so on, and the interpretation we did with the help with some American scholars that are focusing on these historical inscriptions, and also we try to connect these names with present families that are still living in this area. So that is very important as well. Okay, so a few examples of these names and dates and so on, even addresses, as I said before. Also, there are some actually more than 40 different stock brands. I mean, the brands that were used to stample, to mark the cows, the horses. So some of them are still in use in southwestern Colorado and southeastern Utah. For example, the Winbur, but also the Wallace family still use these brands. So it's like we have traces of the brands from the end of the 19th century AD and still are using by these cowboy families. So it's really great, and we are enjoying this. So we also were able to locate, some figures or some people that left their names, like Mel Forrest. He was the U.S. trapper, and he left several initial names. His name in several places in these panels. So we were able to locate all of this. We also interviewed his son about this, and it was really a great part of our project. So it's really great to connect with real people, even the descendants of the people that left their initials, names, and so on these rocks. Joe Eastman is also another person, very well known person from this area. He established the first trading post in southwestern Colorado. Okay, and two last slides. So, okay, there are a few other names. So Ira C, that means Ira cut hair. He was very famous rodeo cowboy, actually from the Utah tribe. He left his name in 1936. Yeah, and 1936, and he passed away 2 years ago. So really important person from the Utah tribe, and we are planning to interview his daughter. Now she is the chief of the Utah tribe. So really a lot of histories that are connected, even recent histories that are very important. Okay, the last few slides about our exhibit from our research that was presented in the museum in the Canyons of the Ancients National Monument. So some officials that came from our university, vice rector and two deans of the Department of History, and some officials from Canyons of the Ancients National Monument. The exhibit was entitled From Krakow to Castle Rock, and it was a bilingual exhibit. I mean, the captions were written in English and in Polish. So I'm really happy that we managed to do this. And this is the part of the exhibit with photos, for example, from the Strowman panel and our activities in the field, and some artifacts and so on. So once again, thank you very much, and for the possibility to present this paper, this presentation. And I'm sorry that I am running off my time and for all of the mistakes, but sorry, but it's a really hectic time, and the jet lag is still working, and a lot of stuff to do here after our coming back. So once again, thanks so much, and goodbye. Thank you very much.